Chasing the Rainbows with your host, Bernice Quisenberry.
Today's segment of shooting all over ourselves is with Bree and B. Thanks so much, Bree, for coming back today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Great. Just to recap, we are going to go real quick through our lived experiences, not like we're minimizing them, but just to give you, to qualify ourselves as baby loss survivors. Bernice went through, my husband and I went through secondary infertility, acute PCOS, uterine fibroids, miscarriage, and our 5.5-week-old daughter, Brooke, died in my arms.
Yeah, and Bree here, we also had uterine fibroids, secondary infertility. We had 2 stillbirths and 4 miscarriages.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Thanks, Bree, for sharing that. So just to kind of put in perspective for our listeners out there, this segment today is really about all those feelings of guilt around our losses. So that's why we wanted to give a quick synopsis for anyone who missed our first episode. But man, that guilt.
Yeah, it's for real.
Yeah. Like, oh my gosh.
Even years later, I still struggle with the guilt of it, of everything. There's a lot.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes. It's like an onion, like just guilt itself and peeling back those layers.
Yes.
And I think the hardest thing too is when we're returning to society after our losses, because we're already still processing everything. It was a whirlwind, and then to still feel like that.
Yep, absolutely. No, I know. And just like you have this internal guilt too. And I think the beauty of us being here today and sharing this is guilt is normal. Like, after you lose a baby, you have these feelings of guilt, and being able to talk about that because we internalize that.
Absolutely.
And because we don't want to burden anybody else, and we fear nobody's going to understand, which, unless you've gone through it, it is hard to understand. But I think us talking about that specific feeling, like there's so many emotions that go along with losing a baby, but the feeling specifically of guilt is something that, I would say almost every single person who has lost a baby deals with that.
Absolutely. And I think something too that, we don't really talk about it, and things that weren't discussed, but, you and I have talked about this before, that we were raised, we're generationally different than our parents, and we were raised where, you kept the problems that you had within your family, and that you guys handled them together, kind of like the old sweep it under the rug kind of thing. But, you move on, like these tough things happen in life, but you like put your 2 feet, your shoes on, your big girl pants on, and keep moving.
Big girl panties on and move forward one step in front of the other. Yeah, right. You don't talk about it.
Right. And so when we were going through and experiencing all these things, I felt like so much guilt because like I should be able to get pregnant. I should be able to carry to full term. I should be able to, give birth to a healthy baby. I should be able to raise my child and me pass away before my babies do.
Yep.
And because that is how life is supposed to go, right? But when that doesn't happen in these shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and we're beating ourselves up about them, it's like, it's good knowing that I have other survivors around me who understand what I'm going through.
Yep. And I think one of the big things for me is I got pregnant with my oldest with no problem. I mean, first month of trying, we got pregnant.
All right.
So then,
seems like a dream.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like you enter secondary infertility, and all of a sudden you're like, well, why am I not getting pregnant? Shouldn't I be able to get pregnant? I got pregnant right away. So,
and statistically, if you have one healthy pregnancy, you go on and they say that, you should be able to continue on that. And when that doesn't happen, you feel this like, oh my gosh, I'm out there on an island alone. All of a sudden, and that guilt all comes.
And was my body failing me? Is like, what did I do? The guilt.
What did I do like back in the day? Like,
you blame
is it
yourself.
Because of this? Yes.
Yep. And that's like a whole, and we can get into that too with, the blame that we place on ourselves, that guilt we place on ourselves for, did I do something wrong? Should I have done something different?
Right.
I feel like there's just so much around guilt that we struggle with as baby loss survivors, because it's just, and nobody, and like we said, nobody's talking about it because it's not a comfortable topic to talk about. And, but it needs to be talked about because it's normal.
And I think I went through this whole guilty period too of after we lost Brooke, I thought, oh my gosh, how did I ever handle people losing babies before this? Or how did I handle someone who went through a miscarriage or someone that was dealing with fertility challenges before Brooke? And I sit there and I was like, was I ever insensitive? Then you beat yourself up. Like I could have done more. Honestly, I think about it and it's like, I just pray, or think, hopefully I didn't say anything offensive or do any of those things and wasn't just like there to listen to the people.
So you feel guilty about that too.
Right. Of course. Just like tack that on to everything else. I think it is. I think it's about like, it's going right there. But then it's also like the guilt around, am I doing enough for my husband? Am I doing enough for if you have other children? Or am I doing enough as an employee in my workplace, while I'm grieving and things like that? And it's...
Well, you're trying to find a balance because especially if you have living children, you want to be there. You want to be a great mom and you want to be there for them and your husband and, or your spouse. You want to be there for them and you want to do what you can for them because they're hurting too. But then you're also trying to just survive each day because that's what it feels like.
Survival mode.
Yeah. And it's like you put this guilt on yourself. You should be doing this for your employer and you should be doing that. But it's hard enough just to crawl out of bed in the morning.
Absolutely.
So there's just this overwhelming guilt that you, in that sense, that really there's nothing you can do because you're just trying to survive.
Yes. And I think the most important thing for me was I actually had to process the guilt because in the grieving bereavement world, they coin these two as being a female and a male griever. And the male grievers, like to move on and any person as they identify as can be either kind of grieving. It doesn't mean like only males can be male grievers.
Oh,
only
right.
Female can be female grievers.
Yeah.
But the male griever, how I take it is like they like to move on. They process it in that way and they, do a really good job with that. And then me, I'm a female griever where I do need to sit with it. I need to process it. I need to completely just keep beating that rug until I feel like I got some answers that I needed.
I feel like I'm a little bit of both.
Right.
I think so my 4 early miscarriages, I think I was more of a male griever.
Right.
But then my 2 stillbirths, I was more of a female griever. Okay. Because there was a lot of guilt associated with those pregnancies that I wondered if I did something wrong.
Yeah.
So I feel like I needed longer to process that. And that took time. To walk through that and to really sit with that and think about that and that was challenging because it's like I felt guilty. I felt like I could have should have
Yes.
done this, done that. Yes. And the guilt surrounding that it took time to work through.
Right. And oh my goodness, yeah, right. It is all around the events and just what happened because we do want to blame ourselves or we go back to that shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yep.
But yeah, and I think too, when we are going through these guilty feelings and we're out in public or we're with friends or family, because we don't know when it's coming on.
Yeah.
Like this onset of these feelings just hit us. And I remember the intensity of it being in the first, and still in it, in these first couple years. And, when that wave of guilt hits you, I wanted to be able to talk to people about it openly and them just sit and listen, right? Just sit with me or embrace me and say, you know what? This is completely valid. Your feelings are hurt. I get it.
You don't need advice necessarily.
Right.
You just want to be validated.
Yes, I don't want advice or I don't want to be like the wounded bird, in the office. I want to feel normal because these are normal feelings. These are normal things that we're going through when we're processing these huge catastrophic losses that we've been through.
Yep.
So this is all normal in processing. But don't you agree? How do you feel when people embraced you, when you're feeling these things of guilt and you just want to blurt it out and get it off your chest because you're angry at yourself?
I think I think that's probably why a lot of us clam up and we don't talk about it.
Right.
Because I didn't want to have the guilt of burdening somebody else with my problems. Yep. And like you said, you don't want to be the wounded bird, right? So everyone felt bad for me. I sensed it. I knew it. The way they look at you and you're the last thing I want to do is talk about it, how I was actually feeling because it's just amplifying that wounded bird, right? So I don't know. I definitely, it took me a while, but I think I did eventually reach out to people who had similar experiences.
Agreed.
And I don't know why I waited so long because it really helped me.
Right.
Because those people knew how to respond to me.
Yes.
Because it was simply your feelings are legit.
Yes.
I felt that too.
Yes.
It's okay. You're
Yes.
gonna be okay.
Yes.
You know, and that's what I needed. I
Right.
didn't need senseless advice from somebody who didn't understand. All coming from good places. Like
Right.
I
And they don't want to
definitely
see you cry. They don't want to
No.
see you upset. They don't want you beating yourself up because they care about you.
Right.
It's all from a good place.
and I didn't
However,
want to make them feel
Yes.
bad for
Yes.
not knowing how to respond, right?
Right.
So
And
but-
as you're crying, like they feel bad because they
Yes.
feel like they made you cry,
Yes.
but they didn't make you. It's
And then you
just
feel
a
guilty about
response. Right. Then it's like all over again.
it's terrible. It's a cycle. But
It
I
is.
definitely I wish I would have reached out to survivors sooner, but I didn't know who those people
Well,
were.
exactly. And you weren't in a place, no offense, after any of, we've gone through whatever we've got, and different losses and things like that. We were not at any mental space to be able to find people and that's, what we're trying to do here. This is why we have
Which I
this.
think is, one of my missions in life now is if I find out somebody has lost a baby, I make it a point to reach out to them because I know
Exactly.
they're not going to have the strength to reach out to me. And I think
That's exactly what you did to me.
just coming alongside people and just
Right.
put
Yep.
your arm around them
Yep.
and say, I've been there. I know what you're going through.
Yep.
But
It goes a long way.
and I
just to feel
encourage
valid.
anybody who has gone through losses, like be that person for somebody else. Cause that's what I really needed in that
Yes.
moment. And it's funny, not funny, but it's crazy how, once you start opening up and sharing, how many people are like, oh, I went through that too.
Exactly.
And I'm like, where were you?
Right.
Months, weeks ago, whatever. I could have used
I know.
that advice, and
know.
it's hard, but it's just hard to
Then
talk
you go back
about.
for guilt because you're like,
Guilt.
oh my goodness, here we go.
Yep.
Like guilt of not reaching out sooner, or guilt of not knowing their own journeys.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, well, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you during your journey.
Yeah.
But like, how would you have been? Because you didn't know.
You didn't know.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of times it's
I
not
know.
intentional. A lot of times you just don't know. People
Exactly.
don't know.
Exactly.
Which,
because of the suffering and silence, like
Yep.
the way that it was, and still, we're trying to break and tap into this whole concept of like, let's get it out there, let's talk it
and
through.
that's why we're here. We're here to talk about it and share our lived experiences and just let people know that there are a lot of other people out there who have gone through this and don't feel don't feel ashamed talking about it because it's important to talk about
That's
it.
exactly right. And, thinking about others too, like during this time was so extremely hard and that guilt, right? Like of reaching out to others that have been on this journey or dealing with relationships and other people,
Yeah.
outside of what's going on, but they are in your inner circle
Yep.
and navigating those, relationships, which we're going to have a whole segment on that. But it's, people that wanted to help and contribute to, like Brooke's service or meals or doing things for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I, at the time, didn't know how to even say thank you. I didn't know
Yeah.
how to accept it. And then those feelings of guilt would come in. Like I didn't thank them for my gratitude with what they've done.
Yep. I'm bad at receiving.
Yes.
I'm a giver. I'm
Yes.
terrible. I don't know. I feel guilt. It's like I've always
Yes.
struggled. I feel guilty for receiving but you got to remember that people want to help.
I know.
And
Don't deprive them of that.
Exactly. Because you're robbing them of that opportunity.
Yeah, and something great that my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, just real quick, they were mentioning too. I was like, people in the world have it a lot worse than I do right now.
Yeah.
And that's what I said to them, and they go and they look at me and they go, honestly, we can't sit here and say that that's accurate because I can't imagine anything worse.
Yeah.
Or, something that's on the same level. And then it put it in perspective for me, like, okay, wow, I guess this is like, I am valid
Yeah.
with how I'm feeling. And that
Yeah.
was the first time that I started to feel that validation with someone, like, okay, my feelings, this is normal. Like, okay, great. Because
Yeah.
I didn't see anyone around me or anyone else that's been
Well, you
through
were
this.
feeling guilty for feeling that way.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and you just needed someone to come up to you and say, "That's okay. That's normal. This is terrible."
Right.
Like, we're not going to make this sound like a
Because I'm
great.
comparing myself. And honestly, during
Sure.
that time, I was like, there's people out there that are homeless. There's people out there. And it's just going
Yep.
down that rabbit hole because, like, why do I feel this? But that's why it's guilt.
Yep.
And talking about it then, like, really helped me to process it, right?
Good.
And to be able to finally feel like I was heard and seen was huge.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love
Yeah.
that. That's so important. I think.
Yeah. But what about like the pressures and the guilt too, like on us returning to society? Because I feel like we're under a microscope now, right? Because everybody knows about our law. If you
Oh,
shared
yes.
it and
Yep.
whatever. But now I know it's probably what I'm putting on myself, and I'm not under a microscope. But feel like that.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Right. So like when you didn't
You got
shower,
like a spotlight on yourself.
Yes.
And that's the hard part. I think that's why it's hard to crawl out of bed. And I think, I mean, it's part of the reason. I think it's hard to go back out to work. I remember returning to work after we lost Landon, and he was our first stillbirth. It was hard to return to work because the moment I walked in, I got the looks, right? Everyone knows what I'm talking about. You get the like sympathetic, which is all coming from a good place.
Yes,
100%. Everyone meant well, but it's just another you know, you're wounded on the inside, and now I feel like I'm wounded on the outside because everybody's looking at me differently, and everyone feels bad, and those are all coming from good places, but it's just another reminder that my baby's not here anymore. And it was hard to one, it's even hard to function mentally because, you know, returning back to work and trying to do your job well, when all you want to do is crawl into bed and cry.
Right.
But then, you know, how are you doing? What can I do? And again, all coming from a good place. And I appreciated everything that everyone, you know, said to me. But it wasn't them, it was me. I just needed more time to process. And I felt like we don't get that time to process.
We don't.
It's a huge problem. I mean, you know, you get 12 weeks of maternity leave when you have a baby, but then when you have a loss, you're expected to return to work, and the mental anguish and emotional anguish.
Once you're released by medical.
Yes, right, exactly.
100%.
And it's hard, and it's just, I don't know. I just remember really, really struggling with that.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, the best thing that happened to me when I did return to our physical office and walked in, you know, it was only a couple of days after we lost Brooke. I remember the one thing that really stuck out to me was someone pulled me into an office, and it was great to see them. And, you know, I was hysterical and crying and stuff like that. And they go, look, I'm always a safe space for you. Whenever you need to come in here and cry.
I love that.
We can go in together. This conference room is never really used. Let's just always come in here.
Aww.
Don't worry. Like, whatever you say, I get. And it was amazing. One, she was a baby loss survivor, but just understanding that she knew I just needed sometimes for someone to like tell me, like we just talked about, you know, that I am a safe space for you, that you can come and cry. Like, I won't judge you.
Don't feel guilty
anything.
about it.
Right.
Don't feel guilty if you need to take a moment and go in and have a good cry, because it happens, and it happens at the oddest times.
You don't expect it. Of course it's random. Of course it can't be planned. Right. In my 2 hours of cry sesh that I got, like from 7 to 9 at night. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like,
Yeah. It's definitely, it's nice to have someone say to you, like, and I had that too. Very understanding coworkers that, you know, if I needed to go take a walk or something and have a good cry, they understood that.
Right. And
So
I think
important.
it is, having those advocates behind you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? I think too, like, I think it's also okay, or at least it was for me, where I did allow myself to kind of wallow in it a little bit. Like, I needed to really process it. And if I needed to take 3, 4 a day, couple days, like just to sit with that guilt and sit in that self-pity, that's okay, because we went through a horrific experience.
Yeah.
So why can't we, you know, and just let ourselves feel it out?
When I think that's some of the societal expectations is you bounce back and you keep going.
Right.
And that's, you know, maybe some people can do that. I never could.
Right.
I think, especially with the 2 stillbirths that we had, and even with the secondary infertility, that's such a long, ongoing journey.
Oh my goodness.
It's ups and down roller coaster, right?
I know.
Excitement and you know, sadness and the process. So. Even
the
with
losses,
that.
like all the, and then seeing your period come every month.
Oh my gosh.
It was just like
that's
the
like
daily,
mourning
it was
too.
a reminder. Exactly.
Yes.
Well, and each time. And like, how can you even think about or do anything else when these things are happening?
Yep. And I think just, you know, I personally needed time to wallow, like you said.
Yes.
And I think you need to allow yourself the grace to do that, because it's important. It's part of the grieving process. And if you want to sit in bed all day and eat Oreos or whatever,
No,
it
seriously.
is, your cookie of choice, and
or
like
ice
cry,
cream,
just
totally an ice cream opportunity over here.
Right. And just do that. And I think it's important because you're processing, and you yes, the laundry isn't getting done. Yes, the dishes aren't getting done.
Everything's piling up.
Everything's piling up, but it's
Feels
okay.
overwhelming,
Yes.
but it's going to be okay.
Don't feel guilty for doing that because
those things can all wait.
It needs
because they'll
to
get
happen.
done eventually.
It will.
Yeah.
And it's
what's the worst case?
You
You're
got to
right.
do it, and you got to take care of yourself. And if that means wallowing,
Yes.
wallow away.
Right. And like, I don't know why it's ever looked as strength for us to put on this pretty happy face when we're going out in public, because to me, that's not real. That's fake. That's phony. So, and I can't be like
and
that.
Exhausting.
It's so exhausting. I don't have the energy at all.
I mean,
during all this to like even keep up with, like, it was really hard to shower for me.
Yeah.
So like,
oh, yeah.
I mean, dry shampoo was my best friend during that time. Like going into the office, like lucky I brushed my teeth kind of situation.
Right. For a little deodorant on and out the door you go.
Lucky. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
I know.
I feel bad for people that had to work close to me, during a couple months. But I mean, that goes back though to, you got to allow yourself. Like it is.
Struggles.
Those struggles happen, and it's okay.
Yep.
And it happens to the best of us, to a lot of us. And
Yep.
it's just great that, people are talking about it.
Yep, I agree. It's so important, and feeling like that's normal, because it is normal. I'm here to tell you it's completely normal. So don't feel bad about it. Don't feel guilty about it. It's definitely something that we all struggled with. And I think the more we say that it's okay, I hope people feel that and feel support surrounding that those dishes will wait.
Absolutely.
That laundry will wait. And, give yourself the grace to mourn.
Absolutely. And once I realized too, like what was really important when I was first trying to get back out there, right, was doing my self-care.
Yeah.
Right? That was way more important than, returning to work and all those stressors and things like that. But for me, it was, okay, I need to do the basics to, one, take care of myself, like almost put my oxygen mask on first.
Yep.
In the infamous, plane that's
Sure.
crashing, you got to put yours on before you put others. And it is that.
I didn't do that. I should have. Here we
Oh,
go.
here
I
we go,
should have.
girl. Yeah, that
The
guilt.
should have. The guilt.
Yeah.
I never did that. I still don't do that, and I'm so bad about it. And I know I should.
Right.
Because it's
Right.
very important.
Absolutely.
I know
100%,
that, but
100%.
I didn't do it, and I still don't, and I regret it, because I think it would have helped me tremendously to do
Agreed.
self-care.
Agreed.
I never took the time to do it because I was I'm a people pleaser, right? So like I put myself last, and I know I should have done stuff to allow myself to grieve and to take those steps of self-care to help process everything. And I didn't do it. Right. So what are some of the things you did? Because I think because a lot of times I don't know what to do because I'm so busy that I don't take the time to do it. But like, what are some things that you did that helped you with self-care, that kind of helped you through that process of grieving?
Right. I think for me, it was really going back to like taking a bath and a shower, like because for a couple days I didn't, and it wasn't because I was grieving so hard. It was because I didn't want to wash Brooke off of me because she died in my arms.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was this whole mind thing, right? And she played with my hair, so I didn't want to wash my hair. I didn't want to do any of that. And then I felt guilty for not wanting to shower or bathe during that time. So during that, my sisters helped sponge bathe me, like once it got to be a day or two, because I was still pumping. Like I needed to start taking care of myself. I get that, but it's really hard in that time. But anyways, and I don't need to tell all you that, of course, but it goes back to that, and then working up to goals of showering and doing all that, and then going back out and getting my hair cut. Like I canceled all of that. I also could not get out there and grocery shop, so I started doing takeout for groceries and going to pick them up instead. And that's what we started doing. But it was like small steps, because then I was at least getting out there in society. I was still doing it.
Baby steps.
And then like walking, getting out there,
fresh air.
It
so
took
important.
a while. So important. And I started out with walking and then eventually got to that. And then I think also allowing myself to sit in bed and cry it out. That was really how I did it.
Yeah.
And my husband allowed me, he would take care of the house. Like, it was just great because we were grieving differently.
Yeah.
But he understood the space I needed. I understood his space, and it made it, not that we did it good or anything, but it made it more manageable.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that's a good reminder that when we talk about self-care, we may think of going for a run, journaling, like all of which is important.
Yes.
But I think in those early days after loss, self-care means taking a shower.
Yes.
The
The basics that are so important.
Eating,
drinking water. Yes.
Yeah.
And like the things.
Yeah, things that we don't look at normally as self-care.
Because they're just into our routine every day.
Yes, but when you're going through a loss and you are struggling to even get out of bed, those are self-care things. And
you need to be reminded during those times, right?
Yes.
I mean, I know it sounds simple, like drink 8 glasses of water a day. Okay, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
But in that time, you need those little simple general reminders like, hey, did you get a meal today? Can I take you? Or like, hey, I want to bring you over a meal because like, and just doing for those people, right?
And I think that's a great way to, bless somebody who's going through a loss, because the last thing you want to think about is, what am I going to have for dinner tonight?
Absolutely.
And
100%.
taking somebody, don't say, hey, what would you like for just take them the meal, because
as long as you know like allergies and stuff like
that.
Yeah,
right.
Or give them like an Uber Eats card or something like that. But we
make it easy for them, because the brain power that's needed to do those basic daily tasks is hard
Honestly,
to do.
I wish we would have had a cleaning lady.
Oh yeah,
I know, and I wasn't in the capability or in the mindset at that time to get one.
Yeah,
because but that would have been so helpful during that time. And I was like, but I didn't think about it or anything. So
but then see, to me, I agree, that would have been great, but at the same time, here we go. Here's the thing. Here's our topic, right?
Because they're cleaning and you're
I'm telling you, guilt is like everywhere. I would feel guilty paying money to make someone else clean my house when I feel like I should be able to just get out of bed and do it myself.
I know,
and that's, oh man, it's so hard. It's like,
it's no.
I can't even. It's
I know.
so hard. Yeah. You wanna mourn. You're going through this horrible experience, and like, you should get out of bed and do stuff, but you just can't.
No, you just
physically
can't.
can't.
And honestly, I wish somebody would have just hired the cleaning lady so I didn't have those feelings of guilt. Because then it was like, someone got us the gift.
Oh, it's a gift. Yep.
Oh, well then, she's coming every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Perfect.
Yes,
right. Okay. Let's
set up, ready to go.
Him or whoever. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's just like, I just wish that had happened.
I know. Well, do you want to talk a little bit about the, so, I had mentioned earlier that I had a lot of guilt surrounding.
Yes, let's dive into Landa and Emma.
Yeah.
That's what you said, and you still hold on to that guilt.
I do.
And this is something that we're trying to address with our Ask a Maternal Fetal Doctor Medicine Anything question.
Yes. So
let's talk about these things.
Let's make notes about this, because I want to ask her,
as a placeholder here.
Right. Yep. We have these segments with our Maternal Fetal Medicine Doctor, and, there's certain things that happened with Emma and Landon that I still struggle with. Should I have done this differently? Because could it have been prevented?
Absolutely.
These losses? So just briefly with Landon, my oldest daughter, she had contracted Fifth's disease, and it was misdiagnosed at the doctor. And so we let it go on, and she wasn't getting better. Well, what ended up happening is, I work in healthcare, so the Fifth's disease entered my body. I had no symptoms, which they were surprised I even got it, because I work in healthcare. I should have already been exposed and all these things. So, the virus crossed the placenta, and for it to do that is pretty rare. And then from what I'm told, and these are questions I would like to ask, and then it ended up crossing over, gave it to Landon, and which is also rare. And then for it to even kill him is like 1 in a million. Again, questions I would love to ask our maternal fetal medicine doctor, because these events took place, right? So then I started thinking, well, if our oldest wasn't misdiagnosed and we would have known, I should have asked questions like, could this be deadly? I'm pregnant. Could this be deadly to our baby? Because then I also found out that there was some trial or something going on nearby that they could have done stem cell stuff to help prevent Landon from passing away if we would have known he contracted it.
Right.
So like all these things, so those are swirling in my head, like, should I have gotten a second opinion about our oldest daughter being sick? Should I, and then should I have pushed for more answers?
Yeah.
Should I have, when we found out, should I have tried to do more to prevent Landon from getting, but looking back, you don't know these things, right? You don't know what you don't know until it happens. And then you can always hindsight 2020, look back and you start questioning stuff. But just these questions that I have, like, should I have done something more?
Years later.
Yes.
Right?
I still struggle with it.
Right?
Well, so that's with Landon. And then with Emma, our other stillborn. So I get bronchitis every year, like really bad bronchitis. And I was pregnant with her, and I remember I had it so bad that year. I coughed so much, like hard, forceful coughing. And I just remember feeling her like moving around a lot more. Now, I was told that baby's protected. It would not affect, like the coughing doesn't affect anything. And I was like, okay, I didn't take medicine because I was pregnant, and she ended up passing away because the cord was wrapped around her neck 3 times. And I feel like I remember her moving a lot, and I feel like I should have gotten medicine, or I should have done something, because even though I was told that it's not possible, I just have this horrible guilt, and I have this like gut feeling, right? All mothers have these like instincts. I just know that I coughed so much and so hard for so long that she got jostled around and the cord ended up around her neck. Again, these are questions I would love to ask our maternal fetal medicine doctor, because
this is normal. I mean, these are all things. How do you not question these things or anything like around the loss, right? Because we just want answers. We want some peace with it.
Yeah.
And for me, it was better for me to know these answers than it was to live with them, the not knowing. So it depends on, how you are as a person. Some are better not knowing.
Yeah. I mean, Emma, here we are 8 years later.
Right.
And Landon, it's been, goodness, like 10 years or so. And I just, 10 years. I don't know. I struggle with that guilt of I could have done something.
I know.
And maybe I couldn't have.
Right.
I don't know.
It's not knowing. Right?
Yes. It's, should I have done this? Should I have done that? And, I feel like we all kind of have those thoughts to a certain degree when we lose a baby, and you share that stuff.
Absolutely.
With the maternal fetal medicine doctor. And I just have this guilt about it. I've learned to let go of some of that and, process it. But I feel like it's always going to be there. I'm always going to have those questions and should I have done more, and those guilty feelings.
Right. That you can go to a community though, or go to a person, right, and get some answers, or to be able to talk about it and just understand that it's okay to not be okay with how things went, or the process, or acceptance and things like that. Because we don't I accepted that we lost Brooke and that she died, right? Yeah. And I'm just referring to Brooke. But I'm never going to accept that she died before me, or that she didn't live a life. Like, I'm not going to accept that, right? And like, that is so hard for me, I think. Yeah. Right. And I think I'm always going to question it. Why did this happen? Yeah. And I feel like that's something we all struggle with. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, well, thanks so much, Bree, for being here.
Of course. Thank you.
Up. Yes. And so stay tuned for our next episode weekly. And hang in there, survivors. We're here with you along every step of the way in your journey.